Hello, good evening. Welcome, welcome one, welcome all. Tonight we are getting into the mythical origin of the Egyptian temple by E.A.E. Reymond. And tonight we're getting into chapter 2. So let's do it to it. Chapter 2. Myth about the origin of the domains and the temple of the falcon. This myth is the contents of the first and second cosmogonical record and of a part of the fifth record, which seem to have been originally included in the sacred book of the early primeval age of gods. The Edfu myth is the unique source that discloses the Egyptian tradition concerning the origin of the sacred domains of the falcon and the creation of his first temple. It is doubtful whether the beginning of the first Edfu record preserves the commencement of the original version of this myth. It appears that a certain number of interpretations of various mythological events, which might precede the first events recorded in the Edfu texts, were omitted. The part of this myth that survives in the Edfu inscriptions, however, seems to allude to a continued and consecutive set of mythical events, which were presented only in a somewhat abbreviated form. Each record seems to consist of a series of sections, each of which illustrates a definite period in the development of the primeval domains of the falcon, and which we attempt to follow in our exposition of facts. So the first record, it says the first section, E6 181 2-16, possibly. Interesting. Hey, Saturnian, welcome in, dude. Happy Friday. Happy Friday evening. Or whenever and wherever y'all's find this, right? So the first record, the primeval island of Trampling. The first record, which is added to a scene of the worship of the sanctified God who came into being at the first occasion, sets out a picture of a primeval island. This island has a principal name, Island of Trampling, and in parentheses it has another language, and two subsidiary ones, Island of Combat and Island of Peace. The Island of Trampling, which is Trampling, as the name of a religion in which the creation took place, is known to us only from the first Edfu cosmogonical record. None of these three names recurs in the main part of the myth. This island seems to have been in darkness, surrounded by the primeval water, called Waret. Wow, and then there's actually hieroglyphs here and other languages. When the light came and the primeval water grew radiant, two divine beings seem to have emerged from the water and were led to the island. These deities were by name Wa and Ah, which is capital W and then capital A, and then another A with a little line over it. Wa and Ah. They are also called the two companions of the divine of heart, and are said to be leaders of a group of divine beings called Shebtu, which is Shebtiw. And also there's hieroglyphs. Shebtu. These two Shebtu perceived reeds. These two Shebtu perceived reeds at the edge of the primeval water, a god named Herter being above it. They landed there, and this place seems to have been given the name Geswaret. Wa and Ah made their first home there. The tradition regarded them as the lands of the Temple of Trampling. Whoa. Second section. Fashioning of the perch. And in parentheses it says Jebba, which is capital DJEBA. The reed having been split in two, a slip of it was planted in the primeval water, and thus Jeba became the name of the slip of reed which was planted in the primeval water and assumed the function of a perch. It is explained that the perch of reed in the water is the reed that uplifts the god, and it is equated with the relic of a divinity called this one, the overlord of the pillar. There's a double D dash pillar. I wonder if it's like, hey, Robert, welcome in. Good to see you, dude. It's a double D. Welsh. Isn't that the TH sound? I don't know. I mean, they're before that. Are they? Aren't they? So, and it is equated with the relic of a divinity called this one, the overlord of the Ad pillar. Another deity, the Ka, arrived on the scene, and a protection rite was performed, probably by Wa and Ah. These incidents are quoted as the origin of the cultist place named Jeba in Wetjeset Neder. It is said the slip of reed is the name of the perch in Wetjeset Neder. Thus, Jeba in Wetjeset Neder became the name of this domain. Newt. Great. Oh. Yeah, that is what it says right there. That's just a comma. Okay, so the slip of the reed is the name of the perch in Wetjeset Neder. Thus, Jeba, Wetjeset Neder became the name of this domain. Great being the water flood in the fields that surround the region of reeds. The abbreviated versions gave us grounds for supposing that this description preserved the tradition concerning the origin of the seat of the first occasion of the god. The god for whom this resting place of reed, pictured as the Jeba perch, was created, is the falcon, also called Lord of Jeba. Whoa. Third section. Events following the creation of the first sacred place. Am I butchering how you pronounce these things? Likely. The sacred place, Jeba, in Wetjeset Neder, having been created, the sanctified ruler appeared. He came from the underworld as a protector, and is said to resemble the Neferher. Subsequently, the sacred place received the name Underworld of the Soul. The two Shebtu acclaimed the divine falcon and said, "Who comes from the underworld?" So said the Shebtu. "The underworld of the soul is this place," so said the falcon. Thus, Underworld of the Soul became the name of this domain. Thereafter, great joy was in the island, which, on this occasion, is described as the great foundation ground of the ruler of the wing. Then the Lord of the Wing arrived in the island, and his blessed offerings were presented to the Lord of the Perch. The same event is described in the abbreviated version differently and also in a more explicit way. We read that it was believed that the Ka arrived in the capacity of the flying Ba, with face like unto Neferher. An act of acclamation was completed by the two Shebtu. Then the narrative proceeds. He came close and gave offerings from his mouth to the Lord of Jeba, so that he may unite with the sky of him whose command is unknown. He gave thanks for the dirty falcon upon the willow. Through his voice was heard, no men had seen him. Or wait, though his voice was heard, no men had seen him. The consorting of the primeval falcon with the soul, the flying ba, is regarded as the first event that came to pass in the primeval Jeba after this was given the name underworld of the soul. Dang. Fourth section, the place of uniting of the company. The place of uniting of the company. Allusion to another mythical event seems to follow. Probably the text preserves only the heading of a record describing what had happened in the place of uniting of the company. The meaning of the name is not clear. The word, which we translate very tentatively as company, might refer to a group of divine beings who had died. There is no relevant text to clarify the significance of this name. The falcon is then described as wandering through the BW place. Hey, good to see you, Dustin. Welcome in. Welcome in, everybody. So the falcon is then described as wandering through the place. It is not clear whether there is an allusion to the foundation of a definite settlement in that place or whether this BW place refers to the original Wet Jesset Nieder. This BW place may well be another place in the island of Trampling. Speculation is vain. This section ends with a spell, which is obviously an interpretation of a later date, and most probably an Edfu tradition. It is said that Horus the Betatite is the lord of Jeba. The Jeba is the Beta, and the ruler of the wing, the flying Ba, is the name of the Betatite. Huh. Dude. Let's take a sip and then let's do it to it. That is so good. I made these little poultices with like desiccated coconut, dried desiccated coconut, and it's like it puts like fresh coconut milk in the tea. When you squish onto it, you see the milk just like, and like the fat from the coconut. It is so delicious. This is white green tea, I think. White fusion green tea. And there's honey in here too. Hey, you stay awesome too, Saturnian. I'll see you next time, man. Dude, that is delicious. Is poultice the right word? It's like a little satchel. It's like a little bundle that I tied in some like cheesecloth. Yeah. Okay. So fifth section, creation of the first payland and the origin of the great primeval mound. The revelation of the sanctified ruler and the lord of the wing seems to have marked a definite period in the development of the first primeval sacred place. The next stage is pictured as an act of creation. Reference is made to the appearance of the first payland upon the foundation ground of the ruler of the wing. Probably this payland is one of the fields which are said at the beginning of this record to be beneath the water. The creation of this payland seems to be connected with an act of uttering of names, which most probably was performed by Wa and Ah. As a result of this action, it is said that a new domain came into existence, the name of which was the Blessed Island and Haroiti, capital Hareoty. The falcon was then greeted as their lord. The occurrence of the verb HPR and DJ-c suggests that this mythological event might illustrate the Egyptian idea about the creation of the ground of a sacred domain. The spells uttered are described as learned spells. What follows may be taken as a ceremony of giving names to the pillar. Then the Shebtu, again, are described as uttering sacred names, such as Kenematen and Teptawi. These names might have been believed to produce the emerging of other paylands. It is not clearly stated in the narrative whether these names refer to the paylands or whether they describe sacred places on the paylands previously created. The narrative ends in an exclamation in which the falcon is invited to arrive in that place. The subsequent stage of the creation was the origin of the great primeval mound. The emergence of the mound seems to be connected also with uttering of names. These names are place in which the enemies were annihilated, territory of the ancestor, and land of him who is great of arm. Those were each the names. Hey, God's Green Earth, welcome in. These three names appear as names either of one or of several sacred places which were created on the great primeval mound. It may be surmised, on the other hand, that they indicate the mythological events which were believed to have come to pass there. We think that the Shebtu were responsible for this act of creation, though the text does not say it. At any rate, they were only creators in that place. With this episode of creation seems to end a definite stage in the development of the earliest sacred world of the gods. Sixth section, assuming the kingship of the Ka. The enemy came over afterwards in the form of the snake. We suspect that a period of time came to pass between the emergence of the great primeval mound and the appearance of the enemy. But the events which might have occurred within the original domain of Wetjeset Neder are not described in this version. It can reasonably be expected that in this primeval Jeba, a sacred act, came to pass in which the falcon assumed the kingship of the Ka. Much is enigmatic in this description, and the hypothesis concerning the kingship of the Ka is based on the expression hipt only, which is HNM space HPT. As far as we can reconstruct the picture, it seems that the Ka revealed sacred things to the falcon, but what these sacred things were is not clear from the main source. The abbreviated version, however, furnishes a clue, for it relates that the falcon told his crew about the praises of Re, which the Ka ordered for him in the Jeba. Dude, this is a lot to take in. Seventh section, revelation of the protector god and the god of the temple. When the enemy snake appeared, the Shebtu seem to have recited sacred spells again. As a result of this action, a protective deity appeared. This deity is named Protector God and is described as the likeness of the Radiant One with face like unto Heter, which is HETER-HER, Heter Her. A supplementary description of this deity is to be found in the abbreviated version and reads, men say that the protector god came forth thereupon in this place to protect the god within the Wetjeset Neder in the capacity of the Segame. In the tradition of a later date, Ta replaces this protector. Thereafter, another deity appeared on the scene. He is the god of the temple, who is also described as the likeness of the Radiant One with the face like unto the Heter. and whose true names seem to be he who created the primeval water. Wow. And it shows me what the hieroglyph of that looks like. It's so cool. The next stage of this history, again, seems to be an act of creation. The water was created by the agency of the creator, and this water contained the power of protecting. This act of creation occurred after the enemy snake was overthrown. Section 8. Setting out the enclosure. And what it actually says is setting out the SBHT dash enclosure. The spet closure? I'm not certain. The following event seems to be the consequence of the attack by the enemy on that sacred area. This part of the narrative seems to describe what had been created and fashioned within the original domain of the island. Allusion is made to the setting out of an enclosure and to the digging out of a channel which contained water of a special sort and which was sanctified against the snake. This moment was the origin of the water by the agency of the divine of heart. 9th section. Revelation of Tannin, which is Tanen. Lord of the creation is mentioned thereafter. This part of the record is of importance, and no parallel can be quoted. The Lord of the creation is said to be Tannin. It appears that after the water was in existence, it was possible for Tannin to emerge. His emergence seems to be also the result of a saying. We are told that Tannin was led forth as a protector when the Shibtu said, "He is Tannin, the revered one." Probably after the Shebtu had pronounced this spell, Tannin was brought out of the water. 10th section. Arriving at the field of the ancestors. The next stage in the history of the primeval domain is described as arrival at the field of Wetcheset Nieder, which restores the ancestors. We suspect that this sentence might have originally been the heading of a record describing what happened in the original domain of Wetcheset Nieder subsequently to the revelation of Tannin and to the creation of the water that protects. It seems as if this passage reveals an additional meaning attached to the Wetcheset Nieder. It is interpreted as restoring the ancestors. Who these ancestors are is not stated. This field seems to have been a place of protection. Allusion with an A. And that's what they've all been. Allusion with an A. Allusion is made to a shelter laid out as a protection of the creator, who is represented by the member of progenitor. The dimensions of this shelter are said to be 5 by 15 cubits, which I looked up recently, and a cubit, according to Google, is anywhere between 18 and 20 inches. But then I saw other people that were even measuring a cubit at 21 and 22 inches. Anyways, just saying. The following description is only a summary of events which were believed to have taken place in the same field after the symbol of creation was given a shelter. The next event appears to have been the building of what had been planned. Reference is made to a mansion named the Mansion of Isden, Isden. But only the title of this section is preserved. If this inference be correct, it follows that the house of another god was erected on the same field and close to the shelter of the creator. The statement, entering by the god of the temple into what was in decay, suggests that this mansion might have been found destroyed. Dude, this is juicy. 11th section. The falcon invested as successor of the Earthmaker. The domain of the Wetchusett is now attacked by the enemy snake, and Heaterher, who is represented defenseless, is hard-pressed. As a result, Tannen created two divinities, the Segame and Sekam-Her, who were symbolized as two staffs, which had the duty of repelling danger from the island. This passage is important in indicating the origin of the spear of the historic time. It was believed to have primarily been a staff upon which Tannen conferred the power of protecting. The following scene shows the presentation of the mace, the great white, of the Earthmaker to his son, the falcon. This is the sole evidence, according to our present knowledge, which shows that this mace was believed primarily to have been connected with the Earthmaker, and might have been the symbol of his sovereignty. Here is the only allusion to the Earthmaker, who, in this drama of creation, is never said to act. Then Tannen brought two other symbols, the pillar and the similitude of the front of the god, while another symbol was placed before the god of the temple, whom we suppose to reside in the shelter. If we agree that this shelter is the same as that mentioned above, it would mean that the ceremony of presenting the mace of the Earthmaker and the other symbols to the falcon took place in the shelter of the Creator, in the presence of the god of the temple. This shelter would appear to be the most sacred spot of the domain. This is interesting. 12th section. Visiting the place for constructing. Following the ceremony in the shelter, there is an allusion to HHBW-HNM. The expression is not clear. Although there is no authority for this view, the interpretation to visit the palace for construction may tentatively be suggested. It is possible that the text alludes to a place in the island other than those already described. The Shebtu, Wa, and Ah had been summoned by the god of the temple. What follows seems to be a command given by the god of the temple to the Shebtu, by virtue of which he conferred upon them the power of fashioning and advised them to visit the place for constructing. However, much is enigmatic in this statement. As a result of this, it seems that the Shebtu were specifying by naming some substances which are described only by the word IHT, with some interesting other marks. By the word it. The Shebtu are also said to utter an invocation of the arm. Probably there is an allusion to the worship of the Creator, which preceded a new action of creation of the islands. The spells which were uttered on that occasion are described as praise of Re. 13th section. Creation of the Paylands. The next stage in the history of this domain is, in the main, occupied the Shebtu, whose function is described as to name or create the things. To name, and then parentheses, it says equals create the things. Naming. Probably this action diffused from the Buhun. What in particular they were creating were the Paylands and other sacred places, and these are now listed. 1. The Mound of the Radiant One. 2. The Island of Re. 3. The DD Pillar of the Earth. 4. The High Hill. 5. The Oil Tree. 6. He who is rich in Kas, or Cause, Kas. 7. Mesen, which is Mesen. 8. He who makes prosperous places. 9. Bedet, which seems to have a subsidiary name, such as the first of the mounds, which is said to be in the presence of the primeval deities. And Bedet is spelled Behdet. One sec. I'll be right back. Hey, No Caps. Good to see you, dude. Welcome in. Awesome. Mm. Dude, that's delicious. The fly is back. Mm. So the creation of the plant. Okay. We suspect that there is an allusion to the making of the magical protection of the newly created Paylands and their sacred places. When this episode came to an end, a new act of creation of the Paylands followed. These are 1. The great seat in which the enemies were annihilated, 2. The throne, and 3. At the time of the praise of Re, the second great primeval mound emerged. Its names apparently were the territory of the circuit and the great place. Subsequently, the meadow grew radiant. Circuit. Okay, 14th section. Visiting the Buhim, which is BW dash HNM. After the creation of the Paylands, there followed again what is called the Buhim. The meaning of this expression, as stating, is obscure. However, it is possible that here the name meant a place in which a sacred settlement was made. Tannen summoned the Shebtu. They reached a place called the Place of Wa, which gave origin to the later Buhim, Place of the Throne. Oh crap! No wait, that's different than the other one. That's BWHMR, Place of the Throne. Rites were performed in front of a willow, then offerings were brought in. The text reads, appearing in speed, coming close to the willow, bringing the offerings in the presence of the arm. Then an obscure SBTY seems to have been erected around this place. The builder gods appeared on the scene, following episodes of acclamation and offerings. The sacred lance was lifted up. A special ritual of protection was performed. Then the falcon was uplifted by the willow, and other protective rites were performed. It appears that there is an allusion to the creation of sacred symbols which were believed to protect the falcon in his seat upon the willow. The gods seem to have created them when they gave names to certain objects which are not described. Probably through these rites, the place of the throne enshrined the willow became protected. Or rather, probably through these rites, the place of the throne enshrining the willow became protected. All this section is enigmatic. 5th section, creation of the Payland and Wetjesset Neater. This section starts with mention of the ghosts, builder gods, and Shebtu. The name of the first company suggests alternative interpretations, either ghosts or pillars, which we may imagine standing on a definite part of the island. Their presence might have been connected with the phase of creation which was about to start. The Shebtu continued the work of creation by reciting more names and spells. They are said to have been put in a place of special significance, which is described as the place in which the things of the earth were filled with power. As a result of the uttering of sacred spells, the primeval water receded and a payland emerged. Then this company of gods, joined by the crew of the Falcon, approached the place of the primeval water, at which also the Hetterher arrived. We suspect that this Buhibit might have been a place at the margin of this payland, and equal, in its nature, to the field of reeds of the original island. It is stated that this BW- place is the BW place of the DD- pillar, and it is again a perch of reed, which seems to be the substitute for the pillar. Afterwards, the falcon arrived and was uplifted by the perch. Thus, the payland was given its name. It was the snipped place that ensured the protection of the gods. With this act, the creation seems to have come to an end, and the divine beings are said to have entered in the place in which the pillar of reeds was enshrined. 16th section. Settling down on the paylands. The following text is rather enigmatic and damaged in parts. We conjecture that there might be an allusion to the settling down on the paylands of the Wetjesset Neater. The crew of the Falcon having arrived, the Shebtu seem to have sailed away. The crew seems to exercise protection over this land. They are described as protecting the things. The meaning of the word IHT, however, is not clear in this context. The abbreviated version reveals that the crew having arrived greeted the Ka of the Paylands, since they saw him in the Payland. Then the Falcon welcomed the crew and invited them to settle down beside him. Then they took care of the IHT of the Payland, which was the home of the Falcon. The Falcon spoke to them about these Ait, which were in the Payland, and also about the way in which the Jeba perch was made by the Shebtu in the Wetjesset Neater. In this land, the Falcon is said to have ruled as the child of the Hetterher upon the pillar of reed, and as such, he was acclaimed as the Lord by the crew. This place of the Jeba perch was declared to have been properly constructed, for it was the place which the Ka had bequeathed to the Falcon. 17th section. Foundation of the Temple of Wetjesset Neater. We suppose that the following section of the myth dealt with the foundation of a mansion of the god within the payland of the Wetjesset Neater, which in the Edvu version of this myth is found described at the end of the 5th record. The Wetjesset Neater, referred to as having existed in the region of Tannin, might well have been the Payland, the origin of which is interpreted in the 1st record. The description of the ground plan of this mansion was included in the same sacred book as that in which is recorded the creation of the sacred domains of the Falcon. The title of this record reads, "Lying out the foundation ground which was made in the temple of Wetjesset Neater in the region of Tannin, in the presence of Re, according to that which is in the book, the specification of the sacred mounds of the early primeval age, as it is called." The foundation was assisted by 24 gods who are the Ogdoad, Seshet, the 7 builder gods, Thoth, and the 7 sages. The manner in which this title is written suggests that we might have here an allusion to the existence of 2 primitive temples, the first of which was founded and constructed during the mythical reign of Tannin. This type of construction seems to have been used later on in the building of another primitive temple. It is said that the temple stood in a vast enclosure surrounding another inner enclosure, which was the real temple. The temple consisted most probably of 2 units, of which the back part appears to be more important and possibly was of earlier date. Its chief sanctuary, named Huit Kni, which is HWT-KNI, I mean, it's sort of an I, was apparently placed on the main axis at the rear of the temple. Its dimensions were 30 cubits from west to east and 20 cubits from south to north. The following text is damaged, but it may be supposed that there was a large courtyard in front of this sanctuary, and perhaps some smaller sanctuaries along the 2 inner sides of this courtyard. The front section of the mansion, so far as the much damaged text permits one to make any reconstruction, consisted primarily of 2 halls. The inner hall, 50 by 45 cubits, had 2 side chapels, each 30 by 30 cubits. In front of the inner hall was another smaller pillared hall, 30 by 15 cubits. This hall also may have had side rooms, but the rest of the description is lost. Wow, dude, I love this stuff. Michelle, welcome in. Good to see ya. Much love to you. Man, it's 11:11 here too. Dang, right? When I was looking into Boaz and Jachin, I was reading Bible passages about the specific cubits and how it was presented, how the pillars actually were. And man, that's why I started researching cubits and like what that actual measurement means, plus the measurements of the pyramids and the cubits and all of that stuff. Okay, so yeah, interesting. Oh my gosh, I love these little coconut bombs. Yum. That is good. So, where are we? The inner hall is 50 by 45 cubits, had 2 side chapels. Wow, each 30 by 30 cubits. Interesting. Yeah, so I mean, I think that this is basically a cubit, right? Wait, this is 18 inches. Yeah. Okay. Second record, 18th section. Events in the Paylands of Jeba. The second record is concerned with the events which were believed to have happened in the Payland of Jeba. We suspect that this Payland of Jeba might have been one of the Paylands which surrounded the island of Trampling. But the narrative does not indicate the exact connection between the Payland and this island. The description of the origin of this Payland does not survive in the Edfu records, and this would be a good reason for supposing that its origin was interpreted in the same way as that of the Payland of the Wedgeset Neater. Wetjesset. The beginning of this record reveals that the Falcon was acclaimed as the Lord by that crew. The Payland is described as his own territory. He seems to have ruled there, also in the capacity of the child of the Heater Her. It is interesting that this name of the Falcon occurs only in connection with the Paylands. The following part of the narrative is written in a very enigmatic manner. The Falcon spoke to his crew and seems to have revealed to them the divine words of the Ka. A series of ritual episodes followed. The ite, sacred substances, and the reed which restores, the place of the pillar, were adored. Thereafter, the narrative alludes to an event which appears as the destruction of a shelter. The 19th section, Fashioning of the Perch. The episode of the adoration of the ite having been performed, the following event is described as arriving at the reed which shelters the throne, or perch, question mark. Then the Shebtu seem to have entered into a place in which they restored the pillar. As the consequence, the primeval water receded. As a consequence, the primeval water receded, and the pillar of the Ka was adored. The Ka seems to have given the instructions for fashioning of the Jeba perch. The presumed words of the Ka read, "To be cut off the top of the reed. A half therefrom is what was divided from it, and which is the side to be uplifted from the cutting." Thereafter, the primeval water became calm, the ite were recalled, and the two Shebtu approached the edge, the reed floating by. They divided the reed, and a cutting from it was planted. Thus the perch became the name of what was in the water. Then the falcon was uplifted as the lord of Jeba, and thus the Wetjeset Neder came into existence after the perch was created. A scene of worship and a silent rite followed. The next event was possibly, the performance of a protective rite. Reference is also made to a blessed command and to developing what was planned. However, much is obscure in this narrative. This stuff is so juicy, man. 20th section, Planning the site of the temple. The Shebtu are described acting in a search of the Bwahum and removing some protective symbols which are described as the likeness of the We'ub. Then the symbol of the Sekam and that of the divine arm. After a ceremony of praise in which all the companies of the creative deities were assembled, the place was declared to be the god's property. However, the divine authority who might assign this place to the god is not named in the text. It appears that the deities working on the foundation of the domain had made this declaration. Allusion is also made to an invocation of the ite, which are said to be in view. Thereafter, the Shebtu were again placed in the place in which the things of all the earth were filled with power. As a result of all these actions, it is said that the primeval water receded. The outcome of it was that a place was planned, probably by the Shebtu. The sages, the builder gods, Seshet and Tek, then the crew also, approached the Lord, and a ceremony of acclamation followed. The place was declared to be fashioned, because the Ka ruled therein, the sovereign. This blessed command and the pillar are enshrined in it. As a consequence of this action, the enemy snake was delivered. '21st section, Planning the mansion. The protection of the site was then made by Tannin, who seems also to have conducted the Lord God to his final place. All this text is very obscure. We suspect that it may contain sacred spells which were believed to provide the magic protection for the site of the mansion before the foundation was laid out. The next action is the bringing in of a ritual book. It is not certain, however, whether it concerns the rites of protection or the foundation of the temple. The laying out of the foundation ground of the temple in the Payland of Jeba, as well as the description of the probable physical appearance of that temple, does not survive in the Edfu records. Only one can guess that this presumed mythical temple might have resembled the mansion of Wetjeset Nieder. Have I butchered how to say that this whole time? 50 minutes for chapter 2. $11.20. Yeah, I'm gonna call it, even though it's juicy, and the next one's not that long. It's so interesting. It's a lot to take in, though, right? So dang. Thanks for hanging out with me and reading about this interesting creation story. It's something else. I love it. And yeah, I probably will go live again this weekend, but we'll just do it like we feel it. And I hope you guys have had a wonderful week and that you're going into some awesome weekends. And yeah, take care of yourselves. Mwah. Until next time, I'll see you soon.